Welcome everyone to another class in decisions. In this course, we're going to establish a base understanding of data concepts. This will be crucial in understanding how to set up the architecture of your project. The learning objectives for this course are as follows. We're going to cover what variables and data types are. We will discuss complex and composite data structures. And finally, we're going to review how to create composite data structures. By the end of this course, you'll be familiar with the most basic concepts of data architecture. So let's talk about variables. Variables are the data name by which a dynamic value is called. It is easier to think of variables as a container or a label for a value. These are vital because this is how we will find the data that we need to pass from one step to the next. The variable name, which we sometimes call an input, will always be the same, but as we process different applications, the value of that variable can change. When designing our flows, we will be working with the variables and passing those to the inputs of steps. Let's take a look at an example. Let's imagine we have a form that takes in 5 pieces of information. We'll be using variables to keep track of that information. On the first run, we enter a set of information and a completely different set of information on the second run. This is how our workflows can take in a limitless number of applications because we do not use the value, but the variable to identify the data through our flows. There's one more vital property of variables, and that is a data type. Data types describe the format of that variable. This will be very vital when you are making inputs and outputs. When a variable is created, you will also select the format of that data by selecting a data type. Variables can be formatted as a Boolean value, which are true and false, a string, which are numbers and letters together, a decimal, those numbers with decimal extensions, date and time, which is date format with a time, or an integer, which is a whole number. And these are what we call primitive data types. Let's take a look at an example. You can see in this example, data types are selected to match the value entered into them. True and false as Boolean, email as a string, currency as a decimal, a birth date as a date time, and a whole number as an integer. Matching appropriate data types to their variables is important in ensuring your application has all the functionality you want. Now that we have covered what variables are and how they will help us, let's go over how to create them in the first place. There are a couple ways, but these will be the main ones you will need while in product training. The first will be from the Flow Designer. You are going to set up input data. This will allow you to make and define temporary independent variables. You will use the option on the right to define input data, and this will open a menu in which you will name and select the data type for each of your variables. You can also create data by using the Start step or the Create Data step. Using these methods, you can quickly define variables to be used as inputs throughout the flow. Let's quickly review what we've covered so far. Number 1, variables are data name, which our dynamic value is called. Number 2, you can create data by using a Setup Input Data button on the action bar or by using the Start step. Number 3, a data type is the way that information is formatted. This will determine what type of data can be contained, whether the value is a date, a decimal, a string, etc. And number 4, there's one data type that we have not discussed as of yet, and that is the complex composite data type. Let's take a deeper look at those. A good analogy to think about when discussing complex data structures is toy building blocks. You have individual blocks, data types, that you can construct together to tell a story or solve a problem. Looking at these complex data structures, assembled blocks, you can make deductions about what the end use case of the data might be. A complex data structure organizes unfiltered data so that it is more relevant for a business process or a use case. There are lots of different types of data structures within decisions. We will talk about those in more depth in later videos, as this is just an introduction to the concepts. So far, we've been working with individual variables. You can use complex composite data types to organize your data in a way that represents business objects. This allows that objects to be used effectively throughout a process. This is why Decisions allows developers to create unique user-defined data structures of varying complexity. An example would be an employee. The data structure name would be employee, but the variables contained within that would be the first name, the last name, the start date, the salary, the department, etc. You could create individual values that take this information, but it'll be more effective to organize this information under a business object. This allows us to move an object from step to step and report on it or make evaluations to the different values as needed. The data structure creation process starts in the Designer folder. From here, you'll use the action bar to locate the action to create data types and integrations. It'll show you all the possible data structures that can be created at the time. Once you make a selection, the following screen will appear, and from here you'll be able to define the different variables that you may want to keep track of for this particular data structure. Once you have saved it, it will take a couple seconds for the data structure to compile. After this, we'll have access to the data structure specific steps so that we can manipulate that data. Another way to think about data structures is as a building. A building has many components that define its function and its use case. Sometimes your use case might be underneath a larger data structure or inside of the building. In this analogy, you might have many data structures or buildings you can look into. But if you are looking for a building called bathroom, you might not find it. But knowing that a data structure, the building, has a bathroom inside of it, as a specific data type, you can make more informed decisions about how to access what you need. In this image, the employee has a composite properties that can be used: first name, salary, if they're a manager or not, and etc. This information might not be obvious when looking at the data structure from the outside, but the information you may need is inside of that structure. So let's take a quick look at decisions and make a composite data structure. Here in Decisions, I have a project called Data Types, and I can click Create Data Type in the top action bar. I'm going to do a simple database structure, and I'm going to name this Employee Database. Within this Employee Database structure, I can have a string for their first name, a string for their last name. We can include their birthday using the date time data type. And we can have a Boolean, true or false, are they a manager? So within this employee database, we have 4 data types. I can save this. And after a moment, we'll get a message on the top right that says that data structure has compiled and we can use it within our flows. There it is. So in review, what have we covered? We talked about variables, how to create data, and what a complex composite data structure is, as well as how to create data structures. Thank you.